Hello, thank you for considering my application for an SSI fellowship. So I'm a PhD student working within the Nuffield Department of Medicine at Oxford, and as a group, we essentially explore approaches to speed up and increase the reliability of clinical microbiology diagnostics. However, partly owing to my training by the SSI's Sustainable Approaches to Biomedical Science program, I've developed a real interest in driving best practices for research software, particularly those tools that sit right at the forefront of translation and clinical application. I've gained some experience in this regard, such as working as an RSE for about a year and a half, alongside and independently to my PhD, as well as teaching software development best practices in Python and JavaScript. And in the latter part of my PhD, I've started speaking at conferences about the importance of both reproducible statistics and reliable software. Just to give some context to the problem, there are two main approaches to diagnostics: traditional drug susceptibility plates and the more modern molecular diagnostic methods, which in low resource settings are faster and easier, and in theory, they're more reliable. So the way the latter method works is a sputum, urine, or blood sample is collected and fed through a DNA sequencing machine. After processing and cleaning, mutations are then extracted from the pathogen's genomes. To then predict if a particular drug will work, these mutations are compared to a lookup table known as a mutation catalog. For example, if our pathogen contains a mutation that exists in a gene associated with resistance to rifampicin, let's say, as defined by the table, we would predict that rifampicin wouldn't work and we would give a different drug regime. Therefore, not only do these tables underpin molecular diagnostic predictions, but those endorsed by the World Health Organization also form the industry standard lookup tables for mutation effects. And this is information that's relied on by clinicians and academics all over the world, and crucially, is now being used to train machine learning models. However, partly due to a lack of community standards, reproducible statistics and sustainable software practices have largely been ignored. Assumptions and shortfalls that were originally introduced to these models over 10 years ago remain overlooked and are getting increasingly buried. So I've sort of made it my mission to try and drive a new set of standards for constructing catalogs and for classifying mutations. There are two main ways by which I mean to do this. The first is to actually develop and release solutions that follow sustainable software practices to essentially create and implement the gold standard. Now, partly why this work is so exciting is we have a direct route to clinical translation. My group, in collaboration with Oracle and the Ellison Institute of Technology, have developed a global diagnostic solution called Pathogena, which again relies on these lookup tables. Now, the second strategy forms my plan for this fellowship and focuses on advocating for this change in approach and basically carrying the message of the SSI into the field of clinical microbiology. Now, we have to walk before we can run, and the most fundamental and perhaps most realistic changes are the recognition of underlying software as a research output, and to work towards a point where clinicians and other end users demand public availability of all software and data. This idea of releasing large, incomprehensible lookup tables that can't be parsed, let alone reproduced, has to end. And we have to move towards releasing reliable tools that together form complete analysis pipelines, from raw data to models, or from clinical sample to prediction. This would not only ensure reproducibility, but also accountability, which is important in all fields, but particularly in clinical diagnostics where lives are being directly impacted. So to achieve these aims, I propose three pursuits. Firstly, I would like to form a focus group with key members of the microbiology diagnostics community to recognize there are better solutions out there and to start developing updated standards for model reproducibility and reliable software. Now, while I realize influencing the WHO may sound a little optimistic, I'm in the very fortuitous position of working alongside and collaborating with several researchers involved in the development of the WHO-endorsed catalogs. And so I really do think I'm in a prime position to start this conversation. Secondly, I will be helping organize the Diagnostics for Lower and Middle Incomes Countries 2025 conference, which focuses on catalyzing the development and delivery of new diagnostics for LMICs. Last year's conference brought together some really high-profile speakers with audience members whose expertise spanned the R&D range for diagnostics. And so it's an ideal place to broadcast the SSI's message directly to the target community. Finally, I will soon be starting a series of around 5 blog posts focused on the importance of adopting modern software practices, but also how to package and release these diagnostic tools. To realize change, researchers will need guides on how they can implement these practices and where they should go for further tuition, such as the carpentries. So the reason for my application today is to be able to hopefully learn from the SSI, to develop my communication skills, and to gain experience in delivering a message via different mediums, particularly to target audiences in other fields, such as in my case, clinicians and medical practitioners. I recognize that as a junior researcher, advocating for change may meet some resistance. And I think that the credibility that an SSI fellowship would afford could really help encourage people to listen and be receptive. I also can't deny that conferences are expensive, and I'd be extremely grateful for any aid you may be able to provide. So I've drafted an estimated cost of £3,000 to accommodate 3 speakers for 2 nights to cover their travel, accommodation, and food. Lastly, I believe the benefits of discussion and collaboration with peers, particularly those who are more experienced, can't be understated. And so I really want to be part of a community where I can share and develop plans. Finally, I'd just like to thank my supervisors and collaborators who have encouraged and supported me down this path. Thank you.